Turn with me in your Bibles, please, to Matthew chapter 8. Matthew chapter 8. In today's passage, we find that Jesus was amazed at something. Amazed is a reaction or a feeling of surprise and awe and astonishment. I want to show you several pictures, aspects of God's creation. They came from a travel email that we received about places to visit in Arizona that are amazing. And I'm curious about how many of these you have actually seen. First is the Grand Canyon. How many have seen the Grand Canyon? The next is called the Wave. It's near the Utah border. Any of you seen this very interesting place? Just a couple. The next one's called the Devil's Bridge near Sedona. Yeah, several of you. Did you walk across it? No, that looks pretty scary to me. The next one, or the last one, is called Horseshoe Bend, and it's near Page. I've seen so many pictures of this, but I've never seen it in person. These are all amazing scenes from God's creation in Arizona. While these unique creations from God are amazing, Jesus was amazed by something very different. Matthew chapter 8, beginning with verse 5. When Jesus returned to Capernaum, a Roman officer, a centurion, came and pleaded with him, "Lord, my young servant lies in bed, paralyzed and in terrible pain." Jesus said, "I'll come and heal him." But the officer said, "Lord, I'm not worthy to have you come to my home. Just say the word from where you are, and my servant will be healed. I know this because I am under the authority of my superior officers, and I have authority over my soldiers. I only need to say go, and they go, or come, and they come. And if I say to my slaves, do this, they do it." When Jesus heard this, he was amazed. Turning to those who were following him, he said, "I tell you the truth, I haven't seen faith like this in all Israel." Then Jesus said to the Roman officer, "Go back home, because of your belief, it has happened." And the young servant was healed that same hour. Well, the main point of this is in verse 10. Jesus was amazed and said, "I've not seen faith like this." So let's back up a bit. What was the situation here? Jesus was back in Capernaum, the small city on the Sea of Galilee. Capernaum included 3 different groups of people. There was a strong Jewish segment, a Roman garrison, and since the geography placed this community at the crossroads of several trade routes, there was also a large group of merchants and business people selling things from all over the world. Well, Jesus had already healed many people in and around Capernaum. Often a crowd appeared at the home of wherever Jesus was staying whenever he was in town. You'll remember the time when the house was so full that 4 guys couldn't get their crippled friend into the house for Jesus to heal him, so they went up on the roof, deconstructed the roof and ceiling, and lowered their friend down in front of Jesus. So Jesus' healing ministry was well known in Capernaum. A Roman centurion from the garrison there from Capernaum, this Roman centurion had a young servant that he was very concerned about. The centurion had been stationed at the garrison in Capernaum for some time. He was a person of high character. Our preconception of Roman soldiers is usually based on those who crucified Jesus, or maybe on some Hollywood movie or TV show. But the reality was Roman centurions who were responsible to command 100 men were often men of high character. During his deployment at Capernaum, this particular Roman centurion had developed a strong relationship with the Jewish people there. We usually think of Roman soldiers being constantly at odds with the local Jewish people, but this was not always the case. The government of Rome had tasked these officers with helping the local people be successful in their lives, and even to be thankful that Rome was such a benevolent overseer. And this particular centurion had developed a very good relationship with the local Jewish people. Luke records this same incident in Luke chapter 7, and he records that this centurion had actually built the synagogue that the local Jewish people worshiped at. They were so thankful that they encouraged Jesus to help this friend of theirs, even if he was a Gentile Roman centurion. This Roman centurion had a young servant that he was very concerned about. While Matthew calls him a young servant, Luke calls him a valued slave. Now, in those days, a slave was usually a meaningless piece of property. If he was good, you kept him. If he was not good, you got rid of him. Well, we don't know what had happened to this particular slave, but somehow he had become paralyzed in severe pain and was not able to do his job. Most slave owners would just have ignored him and let him die. But this centurion didn't do that. He did everything he could to help his valued young servant to get well and out of pain. By the way, this is the only time a person ever came to Jesus on behalf of a slave. You know, that says a whole lot about the character of this Roman officer. When the centurion came to Jesus asking for help for his young servant in verse 7, Jesus said, "I'll come and heal him." Great. Jesus agreed and offered to go to the young servant. But in a stunning negotiation, the centurion had a different expectation. He didn't believe that he deserved to have Jesus come to his home. He didn't believe that he was worthy. Notice that he said that he was not worthy, not his young servant was not worthy. This was a bigger deal than most of us in our day and with our English language might imagine. In those days, there was a social pecking order that was understood by everyone. Rome was the conqueror. They were superior to everyone else. Every other country and nationality was subservient to Rome. And this was a centurion, an officer of the Roman military, one who commanded 100 armed men. He was definitely considered the superior person, much more superior than a poor preacher from Nazareth, a small town a long day's hike to the west. So it was stunning for the centurion to say in verse 8, "Lord, I'm not worthy to have you come into my home." He saw Jesus as his superior. You know, maybe he understood Jesus more than most of the Jewish people did. He went on to explain what he had in mind in verses 8 and 9. He says, "Just say the word from where you are, and my servant will be healed. I know this because I am under the authority of my superior officers, and I have authority over my soldiers. I only need to say go, and they go, or come, and they come. And if I say to my slaves, do this, they do it." So as an officer in the Roman military, he understood authority and that orders must be followed. He understood that Jesus had authority over everything, even disease and paralysis. If Jesus would just say the word, healing would happen even if Jesus was not there in person. Now, most people who wanted to be healed tried to get close enough to Jesus that they could touch him. But this centurion understood that Jesus' power does not have any limitations. Just say the word from where you are, and my servant will be healed. Jesus' response in verses 10 and 13, when Jesus heard this, he was amazed. Turning to those who were following him, he said, I tell you the truth, I haven't seen faith like this in all Israel. Then Jesus said to the Roman officer, go back home. Because you believed, it has happened. And the young servant was healed that same hour. Now the Jewish people, the nation of Israel, they had God's law, the prophets, the Psalms, the rest of what we call the Old Testament. They knew about God and the history of God's dealings with their ancestors. I mean, they were God's chosen people. Each of these Jewish people had been taught about God since they were very young. Now, the one place we might expect to find faith in God would be in Israel. But we would not expect to find a deep faith in God in a Roman soldier who had been born and raised in a foreign country, in a pagan culture, who had been taught to worship idols. But here he was, expressing a deeper understanding of Jesus' authority than any Jewish person Jesus had ever met. Jesus was amazed. The word used for amazed in the Greek language, this is a strong word that Jesus is only recorded as using twice in the whole New Testament, and this was the first time. Jesus had a reaction of feeling surprised, awed, astonished, and he granted the request. And the centurion's young servant was healed. We might call the centurion's faith confidence. Confidence. He was confident that if Jesus simply said the word, his young servant would be healed. How can we have that level of confidence or faith in Jesus today, in our day? What would we need it for? Well, that would probably be different for each of us. I'd like to tell you what I'm needing. This is going to express my profound humanness. This marks the end of our 5th month of major changes in our church due to COVID-19. It seems like almost every week there's been a new development, another significant change, or another major project to be added to an already overwhelmed to-do list. And folks, I'm weary. I'm weary of COVID-19. I'm also weary of the desert summer heat and the lack of rain. Did you know that yesterday we set a new record for the most days of 115 or more in the month of August? Yeah, hot summer, no rain. I'm also weary of all the closed places. I miss the single big church gathering on Sundays for the whole church family to be worshiping together. I miss Sunday school. I miss the small group Bible studies. I miss children's ministries and the enthusiasm involved with kids. I just wanted it to be over and for life to go back to normal, in a cooler month of the year. If you're watching online, I just got some amens from those in person. However, when Dr. Spade offered trainings for Arizona Nazarene pastors back in May and then again in July, he told us this pandemic would likely last for 2 to 3 years, with several waves or surges happening periodically, with a number of closings and openings, and that by the time this is over, what we considered normal 6 months ago will probably not exist in the same form because our culture is changing and adapting. I learned this week that there's a new kind of jewelry on the market. Man, I am so out of fashion and out of style. Now you need to have some kind of a necklace or something hanging from your mask. Maybe it's a lanyard around the back or a necklace or a chain hanging. Never mind. Our culture is changing. People will find a way to make us try to buy anything. But can I tell you confidently that what is not changing is God's purpose for us? In my devotional reading this week, I read in Philippians chapter 1, verse 10. Paul says, "For I want you to know what really matters." Boy, that got my attention. The righteous character produced in your life by Jesus Christ. Folks, we still have the opportunity to allow God to work in us and through us, even though our systems and our culture are changing rapidly. How to go on with my personal struggles. Here's what I'm needing, and I found it in James chapter 1. Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. And I just want to laugh. And it's not because of joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, here's the word, endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow, for when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. So I am needing, like all of us, endurance to keep doing my very best during this very difficult and very different time period. Endurance. Not quit. Keep going. In spite of my weariness, I have confidence and faith that God is in the process of bringing good out of this horrible mess that we call the year 2020. Romans 8, verse 28, and we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose for them. Here's some of the things I've been noticing that's going on in our culture right now. The pace of life for most of us has slowed down. I am not saying that we are less overwhelmed. Just that the number of items on our must-do today list is smaller. The number of places on our taxi service for our family members and where they need to be at is shorter. There are no sports practices or games for our kids. No dance rehearsals or productions. No school activities. Gyms are closed. Even the number of church activities is much smaller, and we miss many of those things. But you know, it might not be bad that the pace of life for most of us has slowed down. Another thing I've noticed is that families are spending much, much more time together. With fewer places to go and fewer things to do, we are spending much more time at home. I've heard of stories of families playing games together and putting puzzles together, preparing food together and working on projects together. Parents are taking a much more active role in the education of their children. While most students doing school online, it seems that parents have been forced into a much more active role. I talked with several parents this week and asked how their kids' online school was going. And every parent I talked to had lots to tell me about how their kids' online school was going. One of them commented, "I'm in kindergarten, I'm in second grade, and I'm in fourth grade all at the same time, and I'm feeling overwhelmed." Another parent told me, I was surprised that she answered the phone when I called, but she was bright and happy and I didn't hear any kids in the background, and she said, "Oh, today's been a tough day. It's just been filled with computer glitches and lots of tears. But I told the kids to take a mid-morning break, and right now I'm at the store buying donuts and chocolate milk." That was a smart mom. My conclusion is we're going to have a bunch of really smart parents real soon because they're having to review all that they learned back when they were in school. While it's not comfortable and it's not easy, I don't think that parents taking a much more active role in their kids' education is such a bad thing. Another good that I'm seeing coming out of this is lots of the modern day false gods or idols that our culture has been worshiping have been taken away. Sometimes I see similarities between the plagues of Moses in Egypt in that time with our current situation today. In Egypt, each of the 10 plagues targeted one of the false gods that Egypt worshiped. In our situation today, here's just a short list of some of the things our pandemic has taken away. Some of these might have served the role of being false gods. Most sports and attending professional and college games in person are gone. Participating ourselves, even going to gyms and working out, are gone. Sports. Movie theaters and the worship of movie stars. Theaters are closed. Most movie-making companies are not working. Tabloid magazines are having to dig deep to find anything to put on their covers. Next time you go to the grocery store, look at the covers on the tabloids and you'll quickly realize they're having to dig really deep just to find something to put on the cover. Entertainments. Disneyland is closed. Water parks and theme parks are closed. Zoos are closed. Even Salt River tubing is closed. Food. Now that wouldn't be a false god or an idol, would it? Well, restaurants that are open are at half capacity or less. Wait times are long, and you can't wait inside where there's air conditioning. You have to wait outside, either in the heat or in your car. And social distancing at restaurants is required. I saw this picture of social distancing, and I just loved it. I want to visit that little sidewalk cafe. We're being forced against our will to give up many of the activities and priorities that had sidetracked us from what is most important in life. So when we look at this situation we're in, where is God in all of this? While God did not cause this disease, I have great confidence and faith that God is bringing much good from it. How can we express our faith and confidence in God in this most unusual time in our history. Here's some ideas of how we can express our faith and confidence in God. First, keep going. Don't give in to despair. Grieve our losses, but don't stay in the grief. Move on to new ways of life. Like the Roman centurion, go to Jesus. Jesus offers wisdom and direction and help. Also, would you look for the many things going on in our culture that demonstrate that God is at work, bringing good out of the difficult situations that we're in. And one more, share your confidence in God with the people that you come in contact with. Yes, we can rise above the situation we're in and have great confidence and faith that God will bring good out of this difficult situation. There's one more thing that we can do, and it comes from this passage of Scripture. It's called intercessory prayer. The young servant, you'll remember, was healed at the request of his master and his master's faith, not his own. Notice Jesus never asked the centurion if his young servant believed in Jesus. There is a concept here that if a person needing help and somebody else goes to God in their behalf, God will act. Yes, each of us needs to place our own faith in God. We cannot get to heaven because of someone else. But this true story lets us know that God will step in and help someone even when the one who is asking for help is somebody else. So pray for your family and your friends who are needing help. Help, not just with illnesses, but also pray for them as while they're in the process of reordering priorities for their lives, and pray that God will help them make good decisions. Folks, God will hear your prayers and He will do something. Jesus is asking each of us today, will you trust me like the Roman centurion did? Will you trust me like that Roman centurion